Blessings, good evening from snivelly Warburton. The inevitable spring cold has caught up with me. I'm not sure if anyone else has got one, but I have. But we will endeavour to snivel through some questions tonight. So, first question. Why did the Buddha include birth in his description of dukkha? Well, this word dukkha is most commonly translated as suffering. It refers to broader kinds of suffering, just general life in general, because human life is impermanent, subject to pain, aging, birth, old age, sickness and death. And then all these different experiences we have where we sometimes don't get what we want and we get what we don't want. So we use this term dukkha, and it's a very convenient word, but sometimes people don't understand those broader implications. Sometimes it's just used for pain, it's like physical pain is dukkha. We say dukkha vedana, painful feeling in the body. But then of course we've got painful feelings in the mind. When you remember something that caused you pain in the past, you may relive it, you remember it, and then some of that pain emerges again. So we have physical and mental painful feelings. We have the nature of things in this world, as we just chanted, sabbe sankhara dukkha, all conditioned things, physical and mental, are subject to degeneration. They don't last. So in that sense, they're dukkha. And it's natural that when somebody is pregnant, it's a time where usually mum, dad and family and friends have a lot of hope, expectation, very positive states of mind, and we have all kinds of celebrations even before baby is born. And we focus more on that, the positive side of pregnancy, birth. And perhaps that's not wrong, but wherever there's a birth, then it will be followed by aging, sickness, death. It's inevitable. So we shouldn't forget that. We should be mindful of that part of the story, because it often catches us unawares later on. And even birth itself, pregnancy, you ask any pregnant mother, it's not all fun and easy. There can be a lot of illness, pain, discomfort. Sometimes has to be a caesarean birth. Nowadays we have a lot of painkillers in use to reduce pain, but still there'll be a lot of pain, discomfort, blood loss, and unfortunately lots of mothers, as a statistic, lots of mothers die in childbirth, babies can die. Even with a successful birth, baby comes out looking awful, all wrinkly, all wet, with the umbilical cord. And if you see in the animal realm, sometimes they just bite the umbilical cord. They don't look good, they don't feel good, they cry, they shout, cry, display displeasure quite quickly. It's not an easy time for baby, and of course mum is completely worn out, exhausted, maybe left with scars, pains and so on. Also, it's a time when mum and baby are prone to catch disease, infection, because the body is so weak. So many kinds of dukkha surrounding birth. it's quite correct for the Buddha to include birth in his explanation of what dukkha is. Aging, we tend to ignore until we start to get old. When you get old is usually, you start realizing it when somebody younger than you calls you old, and you might only be 50 or 60, which isn't necessarily always considered old, but they say, oh, old people like you. Then you realize you're old. But accompanied with aging, we have, again, degeneration or dukkha of the body, limitations, you can't do as much, mobility issues, memory loss, more illnesses, perhaps. There's a whole bunch of dukkha that comes with aging, and sickness is another part of dukkha. And anyone can get sick, from a newborn baby right through to someone at the end of their life on their hospital bed, say, or wherever they are. So aging, sickness, and then ultimate death are inevitable. Exactly how they come about and in what form we can't always predict. Sometimes you can because of science, genetics, lifestyle, but still, the exact details will come out as we go through our life. And often in the early part of our life, we don't like to talk about aging, sickness and death because we feel it is depressing, and so people hide it, ignore it, push it to the side. Often they don't plan for aging, sickness and death, and I don't just mean with money and finance and that kind of thing. I mean mentally don't plan. It's not fashionable, it's not what we want, it's dukkha. So the Buddha is just pointing out the truth, and we call this the first noble truth, the noble truth of dukkha, of stress, suffering, the impermanent nature of body and mind. And babies have that just as much as anyone else. What he pointed out is we tend to get intoxicated with life much of the time. So when we're young, we're intoxicated with youth. There's lots of hope, positive expectations. It's always seen as a tragedy if a baby dies or gets ill, because we have so much hope and expectation. And as kids grow up, they tend to be generally full of beans, not always, sometimes they're injured or disabled, but generally they have energy running here, running there, so it's a time of intoxication with the body and the growth of the body, and not witnessing or not being mindful of dukkha, perhaps. Even when we get ill, you tend to just sit there waiting for your illness to pass. We get impatient, so we might say, I want to be better now. Why is it going to take 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 months, whatever you've got. If you've got a broken limb, it might take 3 months to mend and recover, so that's a time where you have to practice a lot of patience because you're not getting what you want. That's why we call patients. In hospitals they're called a patient, because you have to be patient with pain, suffering, sickness, injury. And it's harder when we're intoxicated with the opposite. We're intoxicated with strength, mobility, vitality, all the good things. So a practitioner, following the Buddha's teaching, will tend to practice mindfulness and equanimity, detachment towards these different experiences, so they don't get too lost and intoxicated with the highs of good health and strong physical body and youth, and they don't get too depressed by aging, sickness and death. Your aim is to maintain mindfulness, and then you can reflect and say, oh, this is the way it is. Sometimes we even use the Four Noble Truths just as a simple guideline in daily living, how to address these issues. So somebody is sick, you say, this is the first noble truth. And what did the Buddha say to practice, how to practice with the First Noble Truth? He said, comprehend it. It's like this. When you get sick, it's like this, it feels like this. Human bodies get sick, they get injured, they do get old. It's like this. Comprehending it as a noble truth with mindfulness, with understanding, rather than just reacting with disappointment, depression, resentment, anger, fear, which unfortunately we do. We often blame the doctor for not curing us, blame life. I used to do that when I was young. When I was young and had an accident or got ill, I'd say the world is against me, it's not fair, it's an injustice. Because intoxication with good health and youth and all these things tends to feed the idea that we shouldn't get ill, illness is somehow unfair, unjust, shouldn't happen to me. Same for injury and so on. But we have to look into this, investigate it, come to comprehend the nature of body and mind as bound up, the Buddha said, bound up with dukkha, with suffering, with change, with impermanence. Nobody remains at the peak of physical fitness forever. And really aging begins with the baby from day one. As soon as there's conception, there's growth. But because there's so much hope and expectation, it's exciting. And we don't see the suffering that's kind of hidden in that experience of the baby growing in the mother's womb and then birth and then coming out. We don't see that maybe, we're not very mindful of it, so we get caught out. So actually birth is just as useful reflection as any other aspect of human life and human existence. Maybe sometimes look at statistics, see how many mothers die in childbirth, how many babies die. Not to make yourself depressed, but just to remind you that this human life is quite fragile. And for a baby to be born successfully is quite special. The statistics are better in countries with more money, more wealth. Poorer countries obviously have more exposure to illness, poor hygiene, poor nutrition, so they struggle more. But even in the wealthier situation, karma plays a role, and some babies die young. Miscarriages are quite common, and it's not simply linked to economics or how good the Medicare system is, how good the doctors are. It's karma as well. There's a whole field to learn from and to understand. That's the first noble truth, is to be understood, comprehended. And that motivates you to press on in your practice for nirodha, the cessation of suffering, which includes the cessation of the cycle of birth and death. No more birth for the arahant. No more getting stuck in a mum's womb for 9 months and all the problems, associated problems. No more. Whatever it is you associate with pain and suffering in your life, if you reach Nibbana, you won't have to do that or go through that again. That's why Nibbana is correctly desirable for human beings. No more birth, aging, sickness and death. Another question. Ajahn, I have a dilemma. This week I am attending a Dhamma retreat online, and I think that the most important and valuable thing to me, however, it is the most important and valuable thing for me. However, I still have to work this week. It's students' exam week, so unavoidably I have to miss 3 meditation sessions already. And then more work requests have arrived just now for more workload and meetings. but I don't want to miss more of the retreat sessions because of my work, which I don't really see as important nor much value except the salary. I can't take a sick leave because that would be a lie. So what should I do? When I feel the lay life work is interfering with my Dhamma practice, I feel irritated easily, that I do not feel I want to tell a lie and say I'm sick, for example, in order to attend one more retreat session. Please recommend a practice for me. Please suggest something for me. Well, it's like many aspects of the lay life. We have to come to terms with our karma if we're in the lay life. We grow up and sometimes we come to Buddhist teachings and learn about meditation later on in life. So it may be too late to become a monk or a nun. Never absolutely too late, but it's harder the older you get. So you have to do the best you can within your situation. You have to accept your karma. So if you have a job that is very demanding of your time, you just try and pick times when you can practice without it clashing with your salaried work. Salary is important because we need to live in the world, and as a layperson you have to pay the bills. So of course you need money. And very few people don't need to work. Most people do need to work to earn money. So you have to arrange your life around this fact. And if you're in the education system, as it sounds like you are, well, one of the advantages is you often do get longer holidays and more holidays than the average person in the corporate sector or buying and selling, trading, all kinds of other jobs. Some people almost have no time off at all in their job. But I know many people in teaching, lecturing, do get time off, and you have to make those decisions. Say, well, I'm not going to write a book or do all this further study. Perhaps I'm going to do more meditation during my time off. And you have to plan it. And when, unfortunately, retreats and things come up, but they clash with your normal workload and your normal schedule, you have to accept that. But there'll be other times where you do get to practice and you have to look for them, make them happen yourself, using your free time and planning things maybe in advance, until maybe later on you get fed up of all this balancing between Dhamma and the world and earning money and then going to retreats back and forth like that. You get fed up with it and then you may really want to ordain. But whether that's this life or in the future, it depends on your spiritual growth, the growth of your barami, particularly renunciation, nekama, barami. Because some people are not ready to ordain, so you just join retreats when you can. And I would recommend a daily practice, even if you're working, you're busy, you're working very hard, long hours. Still, I would recommend meditating at least once a day, maybe in the morning, maybe in the evening. Of course, twice a day is better than once, but I would try and develop a regular Dhamma practice. Also, listening to Dhamma, chanting can be good and supportive. Sitting meditation, and if you're tired from work, well, you come and you do walking meditation. Even in your room, in your home, you can do that. So you gradually center your life around Dhamma practice, even though you know you have to work as well. You just think it through. If you're intelligent enough to get a job, you're probably intelligent enough to plan your own routine of how you're going to practice meditation, listen to Dhamma. And of course, some aspects of the practice we do as we work, like keeping precepts, practicing mindfulness of posture and the activities we're doing to make sure we're not increasing unskillful states of mind, unwholesome states of mind. There's a lot to do in the lay life to support your practice, actually. And then when you're free, you look for those occasions maybe to devote yourself to more retreats and formal practice situations. Then you do the best you can. You have to remember, in the time of the Buddha, there were many lay noble ones, Sotapannas, the famous ones, Anathapindika, Visakha, but many, many others who had jobs, had families, had commitments. Sometimes they couldn't go to the monastery and listen to the Dhamma when they wanted to. So they'd get someone else to go and then ask them, what did the Buddha say? It's a matter of your own commitment to the practice and how you deal with the obstacles of your lay life. And people in the time of the Buddha and since the time of the Buddha have been becoming Sotapannas, attaining samadhi. If you attain something a bit higher than that, you probably would ordain. So, the best way to get the motivation to give up your daytime salaried job is become an anagami. Anagamis don't usually want to work anymore, they want to meditate, so they'll stay in a quiet place somewhere, whether it's a monastery or a kuti somewhere. And people have been doing that since the time of the Buddha right through till today. If you're really addicted and passionate about earning money, working, earning money, etc., okay, well use that and earn a lot of money. Then you've got enough money to support yourself maybe on long-term retreats, 6-month retreats, 1-year sabbaticals, or even you just quit work altogether and you have enough savings that you can stay in monasteries, do retreats, do everything you need because you've already got money to pay the bills. And that's quite a wise way to do things, but you have to be diligent and work hard and earn your money and save your money. And so every day you can ask yourself, how much are you spending your money on? What are you spending it on? How important is that new thing, that new gadget, a new car, new apartment, new this, new that? How important is all of that to you? Because maybe you could save some of that money and then support yourself more in the practice. Do you need the second investment apartment or the second car or the new car? Clothing, travel, do you travel for holidays or for Dhamma? So often you meet lay people, they go and visit a monastery. I went to visit this monastery and I paid respects to the stupa and I met the monk, the teacher, and it was really good. And you ask, how long were you there? Oh, I just went there for a day and then I spent 2 weeks traveling around doing my tourist thing. That's your choice, but if you're really committed to the Dhamma and realizing Dhamma, you have to streamline your choices. So maybe a little bit less tourism and more staying in monasteries, retreat centers, putting effort into your practice. You can't force that, but these are the kind of reflections you have to make in response to the kind of question you brought up tonight. Ajahn, please recommend a practice for me because I cannot fall asleep easily at night. It seems to be, these things depend on causes and conditions. So first thing, I just sit down and look at your life and how you're going. Are you stressed about work or family, worried about health? Because stress, anxiety, worry will keep people awake. Stuff comes up as soon as you lie down and kind of take your foot off the throttle. All kinds of karma will come up in your mind. Sometimes it's lust and desire, sometimes it's fear and aversion, sometimes it's worry. It will all come up, and some of that will keep you awake. Sometimes we're not honest either. You can stay awake because you're full of lust or interest to seek out entertainment, and that will keep you awake. And you don't complain about that because you're maybe enjoying it and it's stimulating, addictive. But then on another time when you feel you need your sleep because you've got something important the next day, you've got to go to work or some meeting or something, you say, oh, I can't sleep. So you've cut out the entertainment and whatever usually you might do, which keeps you awake. Now you've suddenly got this mind that is previously overstimulated, and now that karma is coming up. And we say, oh, I can't sleep, I can't sleep. So you have to start looking at cause and effect, karma. What are you doing before you go to sleep? What states of mind do you experience before you go to sleep? Nowadays we're all looking at these things, screens, light screens, which are very stimulating, so get in the habit of doing less of that before you go to sleep. Listening to Dhamma is a very good way to prepare your mind for going to sleep. Gives you a better perspective on life, problems, things. Of course, meditation also can help you to relax, calm your mind, let go of some of those stresses which might keep you awake. And if you're enjoying meditation or listening to Dhamma, well, that's an antidote to stimulating yourself with games or pornography or entertainments or your favorite book or favorite soap opera, or whatever it is, the sort of things that stir us up. You put them aside and then you might find you sleep better. Another part of it is attitude. So sometimes Dhamma practitioners, particularly people who meditate, do wake up early, or they're not particularly sleepy when they go to bed. Their mind is mindful. Mindfulness can come up any time and be quite strong. So attitude means, well, don't worry about it. Maybe trust that when you're tired you will sleep. If it's not now, maybe later on in the night you'll sleep, or tomorrow night you'll sleep a bit more. That's normal. Sleep isn't, for most people, something you just turn on, turn off. We joke, we say some people have a lot of merit and they can just sit down and they'll fall asleep. Like some of those meditators you see, as soon as they sit down, close their eyes, they're just wobbling, moving around. We say they have a lot of merit because they don't have sleep problems, but they may have samadhi problems, which can be also a problem. So look at cause and effect, what's going on, and try and develop some skillful means. So if you're particularly noticing you're full of anxiety, anger, which is keeping you awake, find meditation objects and activities that help to soothe the mind. So number one would probably be metta meditation. Focus on the thought of goodwill for yourself as a feeling, develop in your heart, spread around your body, and then maybe out to other people, especially if you find you're getting angry with other people, and anger is very stimulating, keeps you awake. If you're ill, sometimes that keeps you awake. Like, I've got a cold, so at night, as soon as I'm falling asleep, I might sneeze, then you wake up again, or cough. Ill health can be a cause for not sleeping very well. So understand what's going on, because that understanding will help reduce worry. Accept it, relax, focus your mind, pay attention to something that's wholesome, enjoyable, brightens your mind. Like recollect the Buddha, or listen to Dhamma, or go to the breath if you find the breath very relaxing, or metta, goodwill. And the Buddha said when you meditate on metta before you go to sleep, you will sleep well, comfortably, and you'll wake up comfortably. The devas will look after you, you won't have bad dreams, you won't wake up and be stressed in the middle of the night because of that metta. But you have to practice it. It's not like 1 minute metta, oh, may all beings be well, and now I demand my 8 hours of sleep. You have to practice metta genuinely bring that thought and that feeling up so it's something tangible for you. And that may take some practice. So I'd recommend practicing that regularly, whether you can sleep well or not. You don't wait till you have a sleep problem, just do it anyway. And don't worry if you can't sleep. It's a chance to practice mindfulness, observe your mind, what's going on, what thoughts are coming up, let go of some defilements, cultivate some skillful reflections. So if I can't sleep, I usually just say, I'll do some more meditation. And when you're tired, eventually you'll sleep. So don't stress about it. Don't make it a bigger problem than it needs to be. That will also help. Last question tonight. Ajahn, how can we experience dispassion in the Buddhist path? Dispassion. It's the opposite of passion, which is a word we use a lot nowadays. You have to be passionate about things, your hobbies, your work, your family, your political views, your goals, have to be passionate. And there is such a thing as skillful passion, true. But when we're talking about dispassion in the Buddhist path, it really is a wholesome state arising from clear knowledge and insight into the way things are. Seeing impermanence, seeing dukkha, the suffering of clinging and attachment, seeing the causal nature of things, seeing anatta, so that the mind doesn't grasp everything as me, myself. This leads to dispassion. Another part of dispassion, the term is viraga. Vi means without. Raga means lust, sensual desire. So without sensual desire. So the mind of viraga is withdrawn from the senses and desire for sight, sound, taste, smell, touch. There's no lust, no greed when dispassion arises. And it comes as the fruit of practicing samatha, vipassana meditation, reflecting on the Dhamma with mindfulness, seeing the true nature of physical and mental phenomena. Because if you see the true nature of things as impermanent, as suffering, you don't want to cling to them. You don't want to. Your mind naturally doesn't want to get mixed up with them. So you become more dispassionate, detached, equanimous. There's a number of qualities that are coming up from those insights until the mind is free from all greed, anger, and delusion. So if you can see something that you formerly attached to as self and as mine and what I like, what I want, it's good for me, and now you can see, well, actually it's impermanent, it's painful, it's a cause of suffering. And the Buddha would say, actually it's a cause ultimately of birth, becoming and birth. When you see that, you know that, your mind automatically lets go, it automatically experiences dispassion. It detaches. It's not a forced thing, it's not something you can force. It comes through clearly seeing and knowing the way things are, and you have to train your mind in mindfulness, wisdom, investigation, all the factors of the path, to the point where that clear knowing and seeing is quite normal. You just know, not to be clung to. It is what it is, it's suffering. If I cling to this, it's suffering. So, for example, this body, knowing this body is ultimately impermanent, unattractive, the inside part. However good we look on the outside, inside is full of all kinds of unattractive bits and pieces, smelly, dirty. That also leads to dispassion, true clear seeing the way the body is. Mental states, even the pleasure, the happiness of jhana, of meditation, knowing that that's impermanent, not to be clung to as self. To the point where the mind is not seeking to cling to anything, but through mindfulness and insight, not through force. It's not something you can force. Well, I don't want anything. That becomes aversion. It's another form of clinging, which leads to another kind of suffering. And it's not dispassion in the Buddha's way. So ultimate dispassion is a very advanced quality of mind that comes through more and more in the practice, especially as you develop samadhi to go beyond the hindrances, and then insight into the three characteristics of impermanence, suffering, not self. So it's a fruit, one of the fruits of the practice, and it leads to liberation. The mind is liberated from attachment because you don't grasp at things that you know are suffering. You let go. You don't pick up a poisonous snake because you know it will bite you. Once you know that, that's the end of the story, isn't it? There's no more doubt, no more concern. Oh, poisonous snake, hi snake, but I'm not going to pick you up. I guess you could say, well, you can train yourself to pick up poisonous snakes, of course, but you know what I mean. You don't pick up poisonous snakes, generally speaking. You don't touch fire because it will burn you. Once you've learnt your lesson, your mind just knows, without having to think about it and sit down and have a discussion, it knows greed, anger, delusion as mental states are suffering when you grasp at them. So non-grasping leads to detachment and dispassion. So you no longer cling to all these things you used to cling to. The mind is free, so it's in a much better state than it was before. And that's why we do it. It's not, people assume dispassion must mean everything is boring. Kind of a very negative state. Life just becomes unbearably boring, no joy, must be miserable, monks sitting there kind of miserable, dispassionate. But I mean, you meet people who probably have experienced deep dispassion in their life, monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen as well. They're not like that, are they? They tend to be very peaceful. They're samanas, they're non-violent, they're non-attached, so they're not following greed, they're not taking advantage of other people, harming other people in their words, their deeds. They're peaceful, and peacefulness is a very special quality. It's tangible. I was talking to a few monks over the weekend, went to a Katina ceremony, and talking about different teachers. When you meet a teacher, some teachers who we believe are noble ones, with very little craving attachment or with a lot of dispassion in their mind, they're very peaceful to be with. You feel the peace, you feel the good energy, the lack of mental agitation and anxiety, the lack of suffering. You feel that. It's not just they have an intellectual understanding of the Buddhist teachings and can explain it well. They may be able to do that as well, but they feel it, and you feel it because they're feeling it is coming to you. You feel waves of joy, pity. And with Ajahn Chah, the last few years of his life, he stopped verbally teaching, but people would go and sit with him and they'd have waves of pity, rapture, joy, and did a lot of letting go, just meditating next to him. Because that's what the noble ones do. They encourage that in an unspoken way as well as a spoken way, through example as well as through talks, in every way. And many people, they say, oh, just go into Ajahn Chah's monastery, just step into the monastery, park the car, walk in a few steps, already they feel this wave of peace. They go, oh, this is special. And you still get people having that today, even after Ajahn Chah's gone. And this is all dispassion. It's different from the average human being who's still full of passion, lust, anguish, all kinds of coarse defilements. They don't come out in the same way, do they? Dispassion comes out in a very peaceful way that leads you on in the Dhamma. The Dhamma, we say leading inwards, leading onwards, depending how you translate it. Dispassion leads to peaceful states of mind. It is peaceful states of mind because it's non-grasping, non-attaching. So there's a few reflections tonight from the Buddha Bodhivana Monastery. Excuse my blocked nose. Blocked nose is a dukkha, so my job is to contemplate the dukkha of having a cold, and may the blessings of Buddha Dhamma Sangha guide you and protect you.